Mr. Speaker, sir, I beg to move that this House fortifies Singapore's resolve to stay united against the threat of terrorism by reaffirming the core values of multiracialism and social cohesion, and calls on the government to continue 1. Promoting vigilance and resilience among Singaporeans to deter and overcome terrorist attacks, 2. Preventing the spread of radicalized teachings which promote violent extremism, and 3. Investing in multiracialism as the best social weapon to defeat the ills terrorism seeks to sow. Sir, the SAF may have powerful weaponry, the home team may have sophisticated arsenal, but our nation's best artillery against a terror attack is multiracialism. Multiracialism is the bedrock, the foundation that will neutralize and defeat the ills terrorism seeks to sow. We have effective, professional, and responsive uniformed teams working to keep us safe. The Singapore Police Force, the Singapore Civil Defence Force, working together with the Singapore Armed Forces, working in turn with the ISD and the SID. But terrorism is not a fight they are to battle against alone. Every Singaporean has a role to play. Why the need to debate this now? There are 3 reasons. First, we face a regional threat. Second, we face a global threat. And third, we have been specifically targeted. Let me deal with the regional threat first. And with your leave, Mr. Speaker, may I display some slides on the LED screen?
Yes, please.
Thank you. Terrorists are returning from Syria and Iraq to Southeast Asia. Misguided, they form terror cells which seek to influence others. It is estimated that in the next 2 years, about 200 terrorists would be released from prisons in the region. They could return to terrorist leanings after their release. Reports have shown that the Marawi conflict has generated potential terrorists, adding to the regional threat we face. But this threat is not just regional. The threat confronts the globe. In fact, every single inhabitable continent in our world has suffered a terror attack since the beginning of this year alone, 2017. In Fort Lauderdale, Florida, a man shot and killed 5 people at the airport. That's January 2017. Just last night, we heard news of a possible terror attack in Las Vegas, 59 people tragically killed. In Manchester, an explosion killed 22 children, youth and adults at an Ariana Grande concert. That was May 2017. Again, just over the weekend in Marseille, France, 2 women were stabbed to death. In Jakarta, 2 explosions at a busy bus station killed 3 police officers and injured 10 people. That was May 2017. In Melbourne, a woman was taken hostage, 2 men were shot, and 3 police officers injured in the line of duty in June of this year. In Colombia, South America, an explosion at a shopping center killed 3 women and injured 11 others. And in Mali, West Africa, 5 people were shot at a tourist resort in June. So, should we move on the assumption that an attack will never happen to us? I don't think so. Rather, we must prepare now. In 2016, plans to attack Singapore were avoided and foiled. Terrorists from Batam planned to launch a rocket attack on Marina Bay Sands in August 2016. The Straits Times reported that there was an Arabic publication circulated last October that identified 2 entities here, the Singapore Exchange and a port, as targets as part of a wider bid to damage American and Western interests. In a separate report by the Jakarta-based Institute for Policy Analysis of Conflict, those heading the Marawi network had urged militants on Telegram to attack targets in Singapore, Thailand, and Japan. For these 3 reasons: 1, our region is facing a heightened threat; 2, the threat is global; and 3, our country has been explicitly targeted. We need to promote vigilance and resilience. According to a report on risk and resilience for the Department of Homeland Security in the United States, pre-event activity is key to resilience. It places importance on the capacity to anticipate, plan, and prepare to cope with threats. An important aspect of this pre-event activity is being vigilant. Why is this so? In London, recent attacks involved vans being driven on pedestrian walkways and knife attacks. They happened in very public areas, accessible to pedestrians and vehicles. Low cost, highly visible, possibility for lone wolf operations, vulnerable targets, a dangerous concoction. These attacks are very difficult to prevent. Put up concrete bollards on every crowded street, check every bag carried on the MRT, restrict the sales of all kinds of knives, even kitchen knives. This would be near impossible. And as Minister K. Shanmugam has said, you can't turn the entire city into a garrison. No matter what interventions the state puts in to try to prevent a terrorist attack, it is very likely that the first responders will be the citizens on the ground. Therefore, it is not just for the specialist forces or the police to be alert to such threats. The possibility of a terror attack needs to be ingrained in the consciousness of everyone. It should not cripple us in Singapore with fear. Rather, that consciousness should help us to know how to spot suspicious activities and how to react to them in a calm and systematic fashion. So firstly, there is a need to identify the threat. The signs of suspicious persons, articles, and vehicles have been disseminated through the SG Secure app and other means. But knowing the signs is not enough. We need to instill the culture of vigilance that would cause people to look up, observe their surroundings, and know how to make a judgment call. That judgment call includes following the instructions in the SG Secure app, which are run, hide, tell. But what to tell is also important. How well we are able to respond to the terror attack would very much depend on how we, the first responders, cooperate with the police by giving information through the SG Secure app. The information communicated is crucial. Hence, according to the SG Secure Guide, we should tell, T-E-L-L. T for total number of attackers, E for equipment or weapons being carried, L for look of attackers, and L for location of attackers, where they are now and moving towards. Our response as citizens will be crucial in order for the response from our uniformed staff to be even more effective. It could be a vehicle marauding through the crowd on a footway, or a knife-wielding group of men in a crowded restaurant. The attackers could be a moving target, and it is our duty as citizens of Singapore to help report suspicious activity before the threat materializes. If the threat is so well disguised and an attack does occur, then we should provide as accurate information as we can through the SG Secure app. To be truly secure, all of us, every Singaporean, has a part to play to be vigilant. It is also important that Singaporeans work synergistically with the uniformed forces in the face of a terror attack. Equally, the uniformed services, Home Team and SAF will need to work synergistically with each other. Very interestingly, Australia amended their laws this year to allow military deployment alongside police personnel after a terror incident has been declared. A synergistic response is needed. Singapore is increasing exercises and training between the Home Team and the SAF, as well as between the Home Team and the citizenry through local emergency preparedness days. But a look at how other countries are planning their responses to terror attacks may be useful for Singapore's policymakers. For example, in Hong Kong, the Standing Chemical, Biological, Radiological, and Nuclear Planning Group meets regularly to formulate contingency plans and procedures for threatened or possible attacks, including terror attacks. It is made up of specialists from various departments and agencies, such as the hospital, laboratories, police force, civil aid service, and fire service. There is a multidisciplinary team on call 24 hours a day to assess threats and give advice on the spot. In Australia, the Prime Minister Malcolm Turnbull wanted personnel from the Defence Force to be placed within law enforcement agencies to assist in coordination efforts. We could study the Hong Kong and Australia models to assess what best practices we could import into Singapore's anti-terror regime. Another key strategy to secure resilience against the psychology of fear that terrorists seek to sow is to promote unity in the aftermath of a terror attack. How we respond to a terror attack is important. A response using home team and SAF military hardware is key. But let us also realize that Singapore and Singaporeans must win the psychological battle. Our unity will ensure we are victorious over any ill the attack seeks to incite. That is why communication is very important. According to Safe Comms, which was commissioned by the European Union, a key message should be, we will not allow terrorists to spread fear and horror and gain the upper hand. The next message is, we know what we are doing. Then the next message is that all those affected will receive all the support that they need. The basic principles are rapid restoration of confidence and security, transparent, trust-building information policy, calmly, competent yet sensitive treatment of all those directly and indirectly involved, leadership with integrity and credibility, and decisive action. The message of social connectedness and hope is important, especially in the aftermath of an attack. In December 2014, a lone gunman held 17 hostages in a cafe in Sydney for more than 16 hours. 2 hostages eventually died. Within a few hours of the attack, a hashtag campaign entitled "I'll Ride With You" went viral on the internet. Australians stood together with their Muslim brothers and sisters. The point is, we need to win the psychological battle. It is not just the day itself, but the day after the attack. How will we act? How will we move ahead? We do not point our fingers, but hold hands and stand united together against terror. But to do so, we need to prepare now. How? A first step now could be to prepare posters and other paraphernalia to send such messages quickly and visibly. These are some of what the residents in the constituency I serve, Ulu Pandan, organized in terms of banners. These are day-after banners. They have been printed, they are in the CC, ready to be put up at locations throughout the constituency should there be an attack. We are one people, one nation, one Singapore. Deny terrorism a victory. Let's stay united. The 4 hands of our races, Singaporean, Chinese, Malay, Indian, and Eurasians, protecting our precious Singapore, holding it together, red and white chosen, the colors of our flag. No to disunity. Terrorism will not win. These messages displayed the day after are what Singaporeans can see and will stir them to say, yes, we are in this together. Yes, it will be okay. So first, we need to promote vigilance and resilience among Singaporeans to deter and overcome terrorist attacks. And that was the first part of the motion. Allow me, sir, to move on to the second point, that we need to prevent the spread of radicalized teachings which promote violent extremism. There were 18 radicalized Singaporeans arrested in the past 2 years, compared to 11 in the preceding years. Let's study that statistic. 18 in the past 2 years, compared to 11 in the preceding 7 years. To take the appropriate action, we have a range of laws that may be applied. We only need to look to the recent terror attack on London Bridge and Borough Market to see why muscular laws which give police proactive and preemptive powers are important. The Independent reported that Scotland Yard acknowledged that the ringleader of the terrorists who carried out the London Bridge attack was known to the police and MI5 for extremism before he went on his rampage of murder and maiming. BBC reported that the ringleader had previously appeared in a Channel 4 documentary about the presence of violent extremists in British cities. In the end, that ringleader led a rampage which killed 8 people and injured 48 others in an attack at London Bridge and Borough Market on 3rd June this year. In Singapore, the laws must not work to hinder investigation. When preemptive detention is necessary, we must act and administer it. We cannot have our hands tied behind our backs. More so in light of what the Minister for Home Affairs shared just 3 weeks ago. Minister K. Shanmugam said that before the Islamic State militant group came on the scene, authorities assessed it would take about 2 years for individuals to become radicalized. But now some individuals may be radicalized in as little as 1 or 2 months. The rate of being influenced has decreased from 22 months, not to 20 months, not to 12 months, but to 2 months. Our laws in Singapore must facilitate early action, preemptive action, to reduce the possibility of terror threats. Laws are important. They are important tools. Our laws do help deter the spread of radicalized teachings which promote violent extremism. And with the changing nature of terrorist attacks in the world, the shorter period for radicalization, we may need to review our laws to ensure that they are flexible enough, that they are robust enough to mitigate against and ameliorate the morphing nature of terror attacks. Allow me, Mr. Speaker, to go through the acts and by so doing, hopefully get across to those who wish to do us harm that we have the requisite laws to act preemptively and swiftly. For example, under Section 7 of the Public Order Act, the Commissioner of Police may refuse or grant a permit if he is of the view that the proposed assembly or procession may glorify the commission or preparation of acts of terrorism, whether in the past or future. A different raft of laws target the action of spreading violent extremism. These can be found in the Penal Code and the Sedition Act. Section 267C of the Penal Code makes it an offense to distribute or possess documents or communicate electronic records that incite violence. The Sedition Act makes it an offense to commit an act which has a seditious tendency, and seditious tendency is defined to include promoting hostility between the races, different races or classes of the population of Singapore. When the need arises, there is the Internal Security Act. For instance, Section 20 empowers the Minister to prohibit or set conditions regarding the possession of documents that contain any incitement to violence. But to add real value, the laws should also aim to assist the detained and help rehabilitate them. Rehabilitation and reintegration are important strategies to stem the spread of such violent extremism. This makes crucial the work of organizations such as the Religious Rehabilitation Group. Its mission statement expands on the importance of rehabilitation to the detainee, and I quote from it, "Rehabilitation seeks to counter detainees' ideological misunderstanding of religion and help them come to terms with the fact that they have been misled," unquote. It was reported that the restriction order of one of the former members of Jamaat Islamiyah was allowed to lapse. He is no longer required for further supervision under the restriction order regime. This is not the only example. ISA detainees can be released from preventive detention and put on restraining orders after they are shown to have made progress in rehabilitation and no longer possess a security threat that requires preventive detention. Therefore, we have an arsenal of laws to empower preemptive action, preventive detention, leading to rehabilitation and hopefully reintegration. The laws are effective and noble, but laws alone cannot offer Singapore's complete counter-offense to terrorism. Multiracialism is the best social weapon to defeat the ills terrorism seeks to sow. What does terrorism seek to sow? Terrorism seeks to sow division, disunity, discord. Terrorism is not the problem of a single race. It is not the problem of a single religion. Terrorists come in all forms. Look at Anders Behring Breivik. In 2011, he committed Norway's worst attack and was convicted of mass murder and terrorism offenses. At that time, it was the world's deadliest terror attack by a lone gunman. Many of his victims were teenagers on a recent summer retreat. Besides the shooting rampage on the island of Utøya, he planted a bomb in a van in Oslo's city center. in total, 77 people were killed. He was a self-declared fascist who held strong anti-Muslim sentiments. What he did was detestable, horrid, and inhumane. There can be no room for violent extremism in Singapore. Violent extremism is an affront to humanity. Therefore, acts of violence such as those acts towards all vulnerable communities in the Rakhine state should stop. To see children suffer like that grates against humanity. In the case of terror attacks around the world, people of different races and religions have shown, through their actions and courage, that they will not condone violence and the killing of the innocent. In July this year, Channel 4 News ran a documentary on a group of Christians in Mosul who were rescuing Muslims from the fire of ISIS snipers there. They risked their lives to save innocent Muslim people. Let me give another example. It was reported by CNA on 5th August that during the fighting in Marawi, a Muslim villager chose to stay put in his house and put his own life in danger, even when his friends and relatives begged him to vacate it. Why did he choose to stay? Because he had people he was protecting there. Who? Christians. They had run out of food, and he helped them escape from the militants' rampage. Terrorism is an affront to all of us, regardless of race or religion. And so we can and need to have a collective counter-offense to it. How? By continuing to strengthen multiracialism and social cohesion in Singapore. We need to view our multiracialism as an asset, a muscular asset. Sir, allow me to share what my view of multiracialism is. Different ethnic communities define their identity in different ways, which may change over time. Multiracialism does not mean we give up our ethnic identity, which is informed by race, which is informed by our cultural upbringing, which is informed to an extent by our religious beliefs. It is not about everybody becoming the same. Multiracialism is about appreciating diversity, diversity in race, in language, in religious beliefs, and at the same time being loyal to our duty we have as Singaporeans. That is the duty to advance Singapore and Singaporeans. In fact, multiracialism makes Singapore a multi-skilled, multi-talented, and multifaceted country. Within Singapore, our population can lean on the different skills, thought processes, talents, and languages of the people from the different races who live in Singapore. When foreign governments visit Singapore, explore trading opportunities and collaboration, our multiracialism becomes an immediate asset. Foreign governments, trading partners, and tourists can relate to the cultures within Singapore, which may be present in their own home countries. That is an asset. Internationally, when Singapore government leaders and businessmen visit China, Indonesia, Malaysia, India, and many other countries, we are able to connect with them. Why? Because cultures are understood well and sometimes shared. We offer those whom we visit and with whom we trade a multiracial Singapore. Multicultured, multi-skilled, multi-talented. It is a precious asset. For me, multiracialism is not an academic issue. Singaporean Eurasians are multiracial in our very genetic makeup and believe in Singapore's multiracialism to the core. We do not want to discard the English, the Portuguese, the Dutch, the Burmese, the Indian influence in us, but at the same time, we have a duty to Singapore. We are multiracial in the very core of our identity, while at the same time profess fierce loyalty to Singapore. Over the centuries, in terms of ethnicity, we have become an amalgamation of many races, including Dutch, English, Portuguese, Ceylonese, and Burmese. One can't divide us and put a bit of us back into the different countries our ancestors came from. We have no homeland but Singapore. This is it. Our duty is to Singapore and her future. So, being part of the Eurasian race, I can understand what it means to be culturally aware of ethnic heritage and all the richness it offers, but at the same time, being completely focused on being Singaporeans first and foremost. This is my experience of multiracialism. I hope we will all aspire towards retaining cultural identities coupled with a strong duty to Singapore. Terrorism seeks to destroy unity. It seeks to disunite communities, make us point fingers at each other, become fractious. But with a cohesive spirit and multiracialism, we can defeat the ills terrorism seeks to sow. That multiracialism is a strength can be illustrated in tangible ways. Look at sports. In the 27 SEA Games women's 4x1 relay, Wendy Earn, Shanti Pereira, Dipna Lim Prasad, and Nur Islin Zaini became the first local women's team to go under 45 seconds, cutting the national record from 45.51 to 44.96 seconds. Each runner's race did not matter. Rather, what mattered to them was the race Singapore had to win. What mattered was the mission, advancing Singapore's flag on the track. Working together, they broke the national record. Growing up, when I was playing lots of hockey, I had Chinese, Indian, Malay, Punjabi, Eurasian teammates. When we played against teams from other countries, our team used to communicate on the pitch in different languages: Malay, English, Mandarin, Punjabi, Tamil, Hokkien, sometimes using very colorful verbs and nouns. Best not repeated, especially here. The other teams were confused at hearing this collage of languages. We used our multiracialism and multilingual ability as assets. Diversity was a strength for our team. What mattered most to us was whether Singapore was up against the opponent on the scoreboard. Singapore has been recognized as a multicultural society, and that has always been independently recognized, and that has also been independently recognized as a strength. According to the Gallup World Poll of 2016, Singapore ranked top out of over 140 countries for tolerance of ethnic minorities. According to the 2015 Legatum Prosperity Index, Singapore ranked the highest among 142 countries where people feel that their country is tolerant of ethnic minorities. In an article in September 2017 in Asian Tribune, the author cited the Singapore government as having recognized the importance of maintaining and fostering racial harmony, and that it had, importantly, and that it had implemented policies and safeguards to that end. Multiracialism does not come naturally. Left to itself, people tend to gravitate along racial lines. In France, after the Charlie Hebdo attacks on 7 January 2015, it was reported that the then Prime Minister Manuel Valls identified 64 ghettos in major cities where significant portions of population were being left behind, economically marginalized into ethnic enclaves. When there is an unfamiliarity between ethnic groups, lack of social cohesion exists. The unfortunate consequence is a sense of distrust between races. So multiracialism doesn't come naturally. We have had to work hard at it, and we need to continue to work hard at it. It is an aspiration, an ideal that we strive and need to continue to strive towards. It is a long work in progress. So what have we done to move towards our aspiration? When it comes to housing, the HDB Ethnic Integration Program ensures that there will be racial diversity in each block of HDB flats. People of different race, of a different religion, live next to each other. There is some familiarity, a platform for social integration through interaction, transcending ethnic boundaries. There is a kampung family. Another important pillar is the interracial and religious confidence circles. It brings leaders of the different religions, ethnic, and community groups together to build friendship and trust. Their good work has brought all of us of different races and religions together and has greatly contributed to furthering our ideal of multiracialism. This picture was taken at the reappointment ceremony of our constituency's IRCC this year. All of us, the races, Chinese, Malay, Indian, Eurasian, and many religions were present and represented at that table, cutting a cake together, symbolizing the reappointment of the IRCC. That was a very meaningful ceremony, possibly only in Singapore. I think all of us do ceremonies in each of our constituencies. What I mean only in Singapore is that this type of ceremony happens only in Singapore. In conclusion, sir, terrorism is an affront to the Chinese community. It is an affront to the Malay community. It is an affront to the Indian community. It is an affront to the Eurasian community. It is an affront to Singapore and her values. This photo is significant. These are our anti-terror frontline task force patrol officers, armed, ready. Look closely. They are a multiracial group of men. Multiracialism is what terrorism seeks to destroy. But in Singapore, it is that same strong multiracialism that will be used to defeat the ills terrorism seeks to sow. That way, we secure for ourselves a happy irony. In the very face of the threat, we deploy a united multiracial force. So I ask this House, do we let terrorism divide us, or do we say, no, not on our soil? When an attack vests on our shores, will Singapore shut down in fear? No, Singapore will not. We will respond as one united people, and that way, Singapore will win. Thank you.